In Russia last year, 400 people were arrested for things that they said on social media. 400 people in Russia. Obviously, this country is very different. How many people do you think were arrested in Britain for things they said on social media last year?
Go on.
Take a guess.
I have no idea.
3,300.
Really? Arrested for what they'd said on social media?
Yeah.
What sort of things get you arrested?
Well, one example I give in my show is there was a young woman from Liverpool called Chelsea Russell, and people can look this up. Her friend was killed in a car crash, a 19-year-old woman, and she posted the lyrics of his favorite song on her Instagram. And there was a rap song, so the lyrics contained several instances of the N-word. She was arrested, prosecuted, found guilty, given 500 hours of community service and a fine, tagged, and for a year she was under 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. curfew.
My goodness.
In Britain.
In Britain?
In 2018.
Interesting, hey folks, and that was in 2018. That many people arrested for what they'd posted on social media in Britain. Amazing, 3,300 people. It's always 33, isn't it? Funny how that works. But yeah, it shows basically everything we've been saying. This whole AI takeover, the way they're getting AI to control everything, the biometrics that they're bringing in on all the borders. They've had these in place in Australia for a while. They've had them in place in certain places in the United States as well, I've noticed when I've travelled through airports. They've had them in place, I believe, in the UK for quite some time. You know, biometrics, facial recognition when you enter the country. And of course they want to link it all together with the digital ID. And you know, where they're going is just beyond dystopia, folks. It really is. This is stuff we've been talking about for years and warning about for years, and they're really bringing it online everywhere they can by any means possible. I mean, just look at the damage that they're willing to do to the world and to people's lives in order to get this in place. Look what they did in Lahaina, in Maui, which was absolutely directed energy weapons. And what they're doing as a response to it is basically introducing AI and smart cities in 15-minute zones. There's actually a plan that was put out a couple of years ago, the Maui Island Plan, of course, for the people. They say this was created, and it's the Maui Island General Plan for 2030, of course. Now, if you go to page 252 on that plan, if you just Google that, you should find the PDF somewhere. I'll see if I can find a link and put it below. But on page 252, it actually talks about creating smart, safe, secure zones. It doesn't word it in that way, but that's basically what it's saying. It's going to have, you know, convenient environments for people to live in, which is basically smart cities. It's what they're talking about, folks. Back in the Secret Garden, as you can see, this is where Anacapulco was held. Great place, folks. It's really coming along. Everything's coming along. Trees are starting to grow leaves again. Now look at some of these palm trees up here. None of these had any leaves for quite some time, folks. That's why there's still so many roofs off around the place. I mean, so many restaurants and things have got palapa roofs, and they're not able to build palapas at the moment because they don't have any palm fronds, because most of the trees had their fronds removed by the hurricane. Been a lot of weird disasters going on. We had earthquakes every day through Anacapulco. One quite large one. It was only maybe 4.8, not that large. But the fact that it was actually centered in Bonfil here, right where the event is held, was a pretty good shake at like 6 o'clock in the morning. A lot of the people, the conference goers, were sort of wondering whether they were safe and should we expect a tsunami. I had people asking me this sort of stuff. I had to say, no, look, we get earthquakes here all the time. But we had one every day during Anacapulco, following the hurricane that was here in October, which landed directly on my house, which you can't make this shit up. And just a few days ago, there was a fire break out here at La Cima. Probably still see a little bit of the smoky haze over that area. That's kind of La Cima and Acapulco just over there. So I live about 40 minutes away from Acapulco, folks, 20 or 30 kilometres out of town at a place called Bonfil. And for those people who think I'm hiding in Mexico, hiding as some of the trolls say, no, I'm not, folks. If you just go and search the Crow House on Google Maps, you'll see exactly where I'm hiding. So yeah, I'm not hiding at all, folks. But this place is really coming along well. Like the secret garden is all coming back to life. There's areas like this little pond that were untouched and this little walkway here that were pretty sheltered and were untouched through the whole thing. But anyway, just the other day, there was a fire at La Cima, Puerto Marquez, and it was sort of threatening Jeff Berwick's home. I actually put out a call on Telegram for any able-bodied people to come help. We were going to head up there and fight the fire. But I got word from some of Jeff's staff that everything was under control. They had it under control, so I sort of didn't do that. But interesting that all these things are happening all at the same time. Just sort of throwing everything at us that they can. But like I said, one of the big problems, and something that I predicted years ago, like in my film Transformation I was talking about this, is the AI takeover. How with the internet we're basically creating the nervous system of a new life form, which will be autonomic intelligence, autonomic virtual life, as I like to call it. And that's what's going to be controlling things. I mean, pretty soon you won't even need a government, because AI will control all of it. I mean, once they put the social crediting system in place, and they put, tracking of everybody, put the digital ID in place so that your ID and your biometrics is linked to absolutely everything you post. And once they do this, they'll be able to go back through your internet browsing history. And they can go back to like 1995, whatever they want, folks. And they'll be able to find everything you ever posted on MySpace and all these old blogs that you used to have. And they can even get stuff that you've edited. They can go back before you edited it and see what you said, whether you were just correcting a typing mistake or whether you said something and then thought the better of it and removed it. Like, it's all there before the edits as well. They can go back and get your whole history. Once they get the digital ID in place, it's not just for what you do from that point forward. It's a record of everything you've ever done and everything you've ever said. And most people, even forget what they wrote on the internet 10, 15, 20 years ago. They had profiles and they had personalities, and they've changed drastically since then. But the information is still there, and it can still be linked to who you are today. Once they bring all this in place, and they bring the social crediting system in place and the carbon credits and all the crap that they're doing, so you'll be judged by how many things you've got in the refrigerator and how many times you use your stove, not just with what your opinions are, because of course we've got to look at your carbon credits, because you're destroying the environment by simply living like a human being. This whole climate change bullshit that they're pushing, folks, which so many people are buying into, it's ridiculous. Even I saw an interview with Abby Martin the other day, or Abby Martin was actually interviewing someone, and she mentioned that the young kids today, like Generation Z, are really waking up. They're not buying into all the bullshit that is being fed to them. It's been fed to the previous generations. They're not believing the news. They want to think for themselves, and they're seeing through a lot of the lies. But at the same time, one of the reasons she gives for it is that these kids are desperate because they're facing climate catastrophe. Whether she meant that or whether she simply thought that the people think they're facing climate catastrophe, I mean, it's another question. You've got to wonder about that. But it was kind of disturbing to see her saying that. But I really like Abby Martin. I like a lot of what she said. She's been very outspoken on a lot of very important issues. Very outspoken on the Palestine issue, which is really good to see, which of course is still going on, folks. You probably saw the massacre the other day. 115 people killed, 760 people injured when Israel opened fire on a food aid truck. They claim they didn't, of course. They claimed that it was Hamas. Of course it was Hamas. Everything Israel does is Hamas, isn't it? Now, they claim that people stampeded the trucks and they all died in the stampede, which is complete rubbish. You can look at the aerial footage, you can see they weren't stampeding at all. And you can even see dead bodies there on the ground. And there was one other report that they said, well, we didn't fire, we didn't shoot at them, But then we shot at them when they started rushing the food trucks. They started coming too close to Israeli vehicles, and we felt in fear for our safety. So we didn't shoot at them, but we did shoot at them. We didn't fire, but we did fire when they got too close to the vehicles. I mean, just complete rubbish, folks. They did fire upon the people, of course. That's why they took the aid trucks in there, because they wanted to start shooting people that came for the aid. And as I said, folks, 115 people dead, 760 people injured. They do this all the time. Israelis are very, very deceptive, folks. Very, very deceptive race of people. The Mossad motto, by deception, thou shalt do war. This is very revealing, and it's very accurate. That's exactly what they do. That's the Mossad motto. Recently, I mean, even a couple of months ago, there was video that was put out of, you know, a bunch of people that were gathered there that were, the Israelis were giving them food aid. They were giving them food and water. It was about, 5 or 6 people, maybe 10 people sitting around, and the Israelis were distributing food aid to them and water aid, showing how much they care. There's actually video footage that exists. I'll see if I can find it. I know you're sick of hearing about Gaza, but I'll see if I can find it anyway. That showed these very same people who were there collecting food aid were shot after that little photo op and thrown into a pit with the rest of the bodies. You can actually see their bodies in the pit. I don't know if I can find it. It's an old video, but this is the sort of stuff the Israelis do, and all of this stuff is becoming blatantly clear to everybody, so that's good in many ways. I mean, that's why I've put so much focus on it, because, as I've said, all of our governments are war criminals. They're all supporting genocide. There's 100 lawyers in Australia who've put actions against Anthony Albanese for his support for genocide. Of course, the argument that they're using is that, well, the ICJ found that they weren't committing genocide, so of course I'm not supporting genocide. But it's a genocide, folks. Of course it's a genocide. Even saying that eventually they're going to take over all of the whole area. They're going to take over the Sinai. They're going to take over most of Saudi Arabia. It's all in the Torah, and it says that we should do that. I mean, fuck the Torah. It's a stupid book, based on racial supremacy and the concept that you can just steal any land you want and it's okay because you're a Jew. That's, of course, why the Jews wrote the book. And then they got that and they translated it and turned it into the Old Testament. But really, it's just a way of glorifying these predators and allowing them to steal most of the land on the earth. That's what they want to do, folks, and eliminate most of the other people. It's unfortunate, but that's what they want to do. But they're very deceptive, very, very deceptive. And the food aid trucks that went into Gaza the other day, I would suggest, was sent in there simply so they could carry out another massacre, because they know they can get away with it. They're publicising this stuff on TV. They're showing you footage themselves. They're showing you footage of them cheering while they're blowing up buildings, blowing up universities. What they've done to some of the universities is absolutely disgraceful. Just by claiming that they're all Hamas bases. There's Hamas bases under everything. Hamas base under Al Shifa Hospital. Well, of course, they built it, so they know it's there. They know there's a room and there's a tunnel system beneath Al Shifa. And it wasn't just beneath Al Shifa. That talk of, Edward Barak said, yeah, we built these bunkers underneath there, and not just under Al Shifa, they built them all over Gaza, because they were in control of Gaza in 2005. The stories, of course, that they left Gaza in 2005 and gave the place full autonomy to the Palestinians, well, no, they didn't. They control every aspect of everything that goes into Gaza and that leaves Gaza. Just the fact that at the start of this so-called war, which isn't a war, it's a slaughter, it's a terror attack, basically, upon civilians. They even said at the start, we're cutting off all water, we're cutting off all electricity, we're cutting off all food supplies. So in the same breath, they're saying Gaza has complete autonomy. If that was so, how is Israel able to cut off the water supply, the electricity and the food supply? Think about that, folks. I mean, everything they say is a lie, but their lies are actually quite transparent when you see through them. But yeah, it's still ongoing, folks, and you've got to put focus on it, because the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. As I've said so many times, these people are some of the most gentle, kindest, most sincere people I ever met in all of my world travels. And the fact that they're being slaughtered and people are just going along with it and saying, I'm sick of talking about it. Now, you're here to bear witness to this, folks, because this affects your future as much as it does theirs. Just look at what they're doing. Like I played at the start there, people arrested for posting on social media back in 2018, and now they're bringing in all this digital ID. Trump saying he wants to have biometric scanning at the borders.
We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. We will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
So I don't know how anybody still believes anything that Trump says, folks. I mean, he's such a plant and he's such an obvious player. You know, bailed out by Sheldon Adelson. His daughter's married to Jared Kushner. And you notice that, like, when a woman marries into a Jewish family, then she becomes a Jew. Apparently, this is what we're told, that the Judaic line, the family line, is traced through the mother. It's like Andrew Kaufman said, yeah, well, I'm a Jew because my mother told me I'm a Jew, but I don't feel like one, but apparently I am, because that's what my mother said. And the line is traced through the mother. Which will be true when you look at mitochondrial DNA and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, whether any of that's true, it's really hard to believe anything they tell us, folks. This is very nice, isn't it? Nice little cabinet. All sorts of beautiful stuff in here, folks. There's this mural that was done by the same lady that painted the mural in the bar. She does great work. There'll be a few symbols in there that people find offensive, but a lot of the people that just do this just do them because they're nice symbols. They do the Eye of Horus because they like Egyptian mythology, they like the pyramids, and they don't know much about secret societies or anything, so you can't always read evil into people's artwork, folks. Sometimes they just like the shapes, you know. But I mean, she's certainly not an evil woman at all. She's a lovely person and a great artist. But anyway, what was I saying? That's right, they trace the line through the mother. But when they do that, when a woman marries into a Jewish family, there's a certain ritual that takes place to convert her to Judaism. I can't remember what the ritual's called, but it's an important part. It's a Jewish custom. If the woman isn't a Jew, then they do this transition to turn her into a Jew, so that her children will be Jews, blah, blah, blah. That's the way it goes. Interesting, they say it's a race, and yet they can get some Caucasian who's born in a completely different country to become a Jew. Well, how is it a race if they can do that? But anyway, we might get back to that later, but they do this certain ritual to bring them into the Jewish system. And when Ivanka married Jared Kushner, they didn't do this ritual, which means she was already a Jew, which means that Trump's first wife was a Jew. And Trump was bailed out by, like I said, Sheldon Adelson, who's a Jew. He's the most pro-Israeli president you've ever seen. And now he's talking about the joys of biometric scanning at all the borders and how he's going to bring it in at all the borders simply to keep America safe. Not to get tabs on you folks, of course. But you see where all this is going. Like, again, tie all this in with the digital ID and the social credit system, and then bring it into AI government, because that's what you'll have. This is why I think a lot of the politicians are sort of arcing up about AI, because they're realising they're going to be out of a job. Most of the low-level politicians are going to be out of a job anyway. Like, I wondered if there was a snake skin hanging here a little while ago, but I think it's gone now. Must have been a snake. Must have been a snake who shed its skin. But with AI control of everything, as I've said many times in the past when I was focusing on this stuff more, you won't need government, you won't need a legal system, because it'll all be determined by social credit scores, it'll all be determined by carbon credit scores. I mean, the social credit scores will monitor your actions and your thoughts. It's like the thought police, you know, that they had in 1984. You can't think bad thoughts, always think pure thoughts, folks. That's what's required, pure thoughts, which are, of course, government-approved thoughts. But if you start saying things that the government doesn't like, then you'll be penalised. You'll be locked out of air travel, you'll be locked out of even your bank, your finances. You should be allowed to have the minimum of things. Well, probably not even that. You just have to go onto welfare and get fed what the government wants to feed you and live where the government wants to put you, which will be in a smart city and being fed bugs and insects and mealworms and all the stuff that they want to give you. Plant-based diets, folks. More plant-based diets. And just all the vegans pushing this shit and claiming this is the way we should live. The fact that the government is pushing it, doesn't that concern you at all? Doesn't that cause alarm bells to go off in your head? Why would the government be pushing a vegan diet if it was so good for you and they're aiming for carbon net zero? And you can even be fined and jailed for speaking out about net zero anymore, complaining about it or even questioning it. And net zero means no carbon life. I mean, we're all carbon-based life forms. And while they're trying to reduce CO2 and all the stuff they're doing, there's concerns in Australia and New Zealand because there's a massive CO2 shortage. Now, I talked about this years ago. There's actually a CO2 shortage while they're trying to cut down CO2. And they're cutting down trees and putting up wind farms and all sorts of stuff like this. I mean, Bill Gates is doing all this ridiculous crap, like destroying entire forests to put up wind farms to protect us from the environment. It's crazy. These wind farms are electrical. I put a video out a few months ago which showed that they're actually electrical farms. They're electrical turbines. When the turbines turn, they're being powered by an electrical motor which is running off the grid. And all they're doing is draining the grid of massive amounts of electricity. And the electricity they're generating and putting back into the grid, well, the grid has to remain stable. The electrical grid has to remain stable. You can't have it ramping up and down. So when these turbines actually do generate electricity over what they're using and start putting it back into the grid, the power stations simply let off steam to keep the grid balanced. So the electricity never gets used, doesn't get stored anywhere. There isn't a jar somewhere they keep the excess electricity generated by the wind farms in. It's a scam. The whole thing's a scam to use more and more power to create this type of shortage that they're pushing and blaming you for. It's such a scam, folks. Everything they do is backwards and everything they say is backwards and everything they tell you is a lie. It's remarkable. But when all this sort of stuff is in place, the social credit score, which will determine what you think and what you say, the carbon credit score, which will determine how much electricity you're able to use, again, while they're just using massive amounts with these wind farms and generating none that is usable. It's a total scam and an excuse to say that the grid is failing, to say that it's overstretched, and also to wipe out more and more forest and deforest the earth. And all the claims they make of wanting to protect the environment, it's all crap, folks. But when all this is in place, you won't need a judge, you won't need a jury, you won't need any of that sort of stuff. You won't even need a legal system. You'll have social credit points and you have carbon credit points. And once you get to a certain level on those points, get down to a certain level, the AI will have already determined what your sentence will be. You may need to go to a rehabilitation centre or a reorientation centre or somewhere that they can put you to re-educate you on how to live within this system. If you don't, then you'll simply become an undesirable and they will keep you there. Well, maybe it will be too expensive to keep you there, so they'll probably move you to the crematorium next door and burn you, or perhaps recycle you into Soylent Green. Who knows where they're going with all this stuff. But you won't need any of this legal system. You won't even need a government because it will all be determined by AI. Sure, you'll have a Prime Minister and his cabinet. It'll simply be some figurehead spokesperson and a bunch of people there to argue with him to provide a little bit of theatre for the masses, when really it's the AI running the whole thing. It's crazy, folks, and that's where it's going. And if you want an example of what they can do in a 15-minute city if the population rebels, well, I give you Palestine and the Gaza Strip, which, as I've said for years, is a mechanism for warehousing and surplusing human beings. It is the greatest moral dilemma we face against the most gentle people on earth, who are not anything like the way the media or Israel portrays them. And if we do not deal with this moral dilemma, then the way of Palestine will be the way of the world. And we see this with this social credit system, carbon credits. Your carbon credits and social credits, I mean, they're controlling every single thing that you do, your access to everything, which is what Israel has done to Gaza. It controls every aspect of everything that goes in and out, has the ability to shut off their electricity, shut off their power, shut off their money supply, shut off their food supply. The government has the ability to do that to every single 15-minute zone now that they have put this system in place, or once this system comes in place. And with the whole 5G network everywhere, I've already mentioned to you, 5G is basically a weapons system. 5G is the 5th generation of communication which incorporates a millimetre wave. A millimetre wave is military technology which is used in active denial systems. Communication is a secondary benefit from the millimetre wave. 5G itself isn't a thing. People think the 5G frequency. There is no 5G frequency. 5G simply stands for 5th generation of communication. And as I said, it incorporates a millimetre wave. That's the problem. So once they put these 5G towers up around certain suburbs, well, they can effectively wall you in the way they have with the people of Gaza. And they use Gaza for weapons testing and all sorts of stuff. And the fact that they're able to carry out a genocide, to slaughter so many women and children, and so many people are cheering it on, shows just how easily they're actually going to get away with this in suburban America, suburban England, suburban Australia, New Zealand, suburban Europe, if people allow them to do it and get away with it. There's been a lot of protests, of course. The truckers, the farmers, but they're protesting in the wrong way. As I've said, they're blocking down supplies, they're blocking down cities, they're blocking people getting to airports, they're shutting the system down themselves, which is entirely the wrong thing to do. Either these farmers' protests are controlled by the government and controlled from within, and they're playing into the globalists' hands, or they're simply naive and don't know what they're doing. But by shutting down the food supply and shutting down transport and shutting down towns and cities the way they're doing, and everywhere across Europe, in Spain, in Netherlands, in Belgium, everywhere they're doing it. They're basically playing into the system's hands by doing that. I'm sure there's a lot of truckers that are in there, a lot of farmers that are in there and saying we need to do this to protest what's going on. But the best form of protest is to get on with farming. That's the best thing you can do, because that's what they want you to stop doing, and that's what you're stopping doing by driving all these tractors into major population centres and blocking them down. You're locking all the people down the way the government locked them down. It's crazy. So you've got to really look at this realistically, and the way to get around this and the really effective form of protest that you could have is to get on with farming, get on with your life. Like I said, develop a hotline number so that if any farmer gets raided by police and told to shut down, you flash mob them. Suddenly there's thousands and thousands of people there, far more than the police can deal with, and you simply drive the police off the land and you continue with what you're doing. That's really the best form of protest against any of this stuff, folks. But it's kind of where we're going, this really dystopian AI future. Well, you won't even need government. And eventually the figureheads that are there, will they even be real? You can see how they can do this now with deep fake. You can get a picture of someone, you can get a video of someone, and just have them talk and say whatever you want, and it's very, very realistic. There's all sorts of images you can generate of people who don't exist. I showed you when I did the expose on Somerset Belanoff a couple of years ago, this whole rumour was going around that this is the head of the snake, this Somerset Belanoff woman who actually doesn't exist. And her whole crew and the whole place, Glamis Castle is real, all the bloodlines are real, everything that's mentioned is very real. But the people that are shown to belong to this, whatever it was called, this whole Somerset Belanoff group, none of these people exist. And I showed you there's a website you can go to called This Person Does Not Exist, and it will generate AI faces for you. You can also go to other websites and you can generate whatever type of AI face you want. I would suggest this is where they get a lot of their victims for their shootings and things from, such as the Sandy Hook killings. I doubt that any of these children actually existed that supposedly died. You can go and generate these type of images on these websites and they look very, very realistic. So, some things are real and some things aren't, folks. You've got to really look at this objectively. Like with every mass shooting, you've got to sort of put it on its own clean slate and judge it by its own merits. They fake a lot of them, but a lot of them are real as well. So, you've really got to look at what's going on here and how it's done, and don't just be led by what is told to you by some of the major players in the alternate media, which itself has been taken over as well. The mainstream media has basically taken over the alternative media. You've got these new players on the block, you know, Tucker Carlson and what's that other guy, the comedy guy, what's his name? God, I mentioned him the other day on a show, Russell Brand. People like this, Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson. There's a lot of players in there that are now saying things that you want to hear, but they're misdirecting you. I mean, even Elon Musk is pretending that he's speaking out against the system. He's making all sorts of stuff, all sorts of noises about the AI takeover when he's the one who's funding it. He's making all sorts of talk about the border situation as well, how they need to fix the southern border in the United States, which is true, they do. There's a lot of people pouring across because the wall was never built. I mean, Trump never built the wall. He never built any of the stuff he said he was going to do. And of course, they're doing all this border crisis to get people to cheer on the concept of biometrics. Even Trump himself is pushing biometrics to get into any border into the United States. And this is again all leading towards the same thing. The whole AI takeover that we predicted so many years ago, which I would suspect is a lot of what the jab is about as well. I did shows New Year's Eve, like maybe 12, 14 months ago. I think it was, there might have even been the year before. I think it was 12, 14 months ago. I think it was the year before last. And I was talking about the intrabody nano network, how they're hooking everybody up. It isn't just the Internet of Things, it's also the Internet of Bodies. They want everybody and everything connected to the Internet, so they've got permanent tabs on everybody all the time. Coming back to this whole biometrics thing. Yeah, and like I said, once they've got this digital ID in place, but you're going to need it to even log online or access your bank account or anything, well, then they've got you, and they've got everything you've ever done way back to when the Internet started. This is why it's called the Internet, folks, the international net, the World Wide Web. It isn't just communication based, it's also a web. It's a net. It's for catching people, especially catching free thinkers and people who think outside the box, who are questioning all of this stuff. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy where we're going, folks. Absolutely nuts. And getting more and more nuts. But like I said, I mean, you've got people supporting genocide in Gaza, cheering it on. So what do you think they have in store for you? And as I've said, this is a huge opportunity for us, because now you don't have to obey anything the government's telling you, because they're all war criminals. They've all been supporting this and funding it. I mean, Australia even sent aircraft or sent aid, sent ships, sent something there. United States has been sending stuff there. Sent food aid packages there full of the most toxic food, like Skittles, which are known to create stomach cramps in children and all sorts of stuff. Just brutalising these people. And the massacre the other day, I mean, this was flour that was being brought. It's been called the flour massacre. There's people in Gaza who haven't tasted bread for 3 or 4 months. And it's one of their basic staples is bread. I mean, they use this flat bread to pick up their food and eat it with, you know, all the time through the Middle East. And they haven't had any flour to do that. And when they actually brought flour in, the Israelis started shooting at them. And of course, they deny it, because Israel is the most deceptive state in the history of the world. But I mean, if it isn't genocide, well, what are they doing? How are they killing so many people? Driven them all down to Rafah, and now they're attacking Rafah, claiming it's Hamas. And, you know, we're not going to stop until you release the hostages. I would suggest there are no hostages, folks. There might have been some to begin with, but there certainly are none now. If there were any, they've been carpet bombed. But I don't think that half of these people are real. I think they're just AI-generated faces, and they're claiming that they're real. And they're claiming they won't cease fire until the hostages are released. But of course, Hamas can't release the hostages, because Hamas is virtually non-existent in Gaza now, and there are no hostages. Now, we hear statements that, oh no, Hamas says they won't release the hostages until there's a ceasefire. Well, you know, Hamas, the higher levels of Hamas that would be making such statements, are fully controlled by Israel anyway. And what Israel is doing is slaughtering people on the ground by claiming there are Hamas tunnels under every building and every tent and every rock and every stone. It's just complete bullshit, folks. And half the tunnels they're blowing up are tunnels that were built by Israel themselves in 2005 or prior to 2005, when Israel was in control of the place. It's a scam, folks. The whole thing is a scam. It really is. But hey, I haven't even looked at my list yet. I suppose I should get started. So, yeah, I mean, I just looking at the world situation, folks, is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. But a lot of people are speaking out about it now, like I said. A lot of people are. You'll notice that a lot of world leaders are as well, like Macron started speaking out against the genocide of Gaza. when previously he was supporting it. Why do you think that is, folks? Of course, you've got to have people on the inside saying what you want to hear, so you'll start trusting these people. I mean, there's huge riots and protests going on in France, so of course Macron's got to say something that appeases the people by saying he supports the Palestinian cause and he believes that there's a genocide going on, when previously he was supporting the Israeli action. I think a lot of the reason they're doing this as well is because, as we've said, they're all war criminals now. They've identified themselves clearly as war criminals by supporting this genocide, and it's plainly a genocide. As I was going to say before, actually, they're claiming it isn't a genocide when it is. If it's not a genocide, how is it that there are US companies now advertising housing blocks in West Bank for Jews? You can go and buy a housing block in West Bank because they plan on annexing all of West Bank and annexing all of Gaza and turning it all into Israel. And we shouldn't be calling it Israel from this point forward, folks. We should be calling it occupied Palestine, because that's what it is. Even with what's going on with Ivanka Trump, I mean, the fact that she didn't go through the ritual and blah, 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 and the fact that they can just turn someone into a Jew if they want to. Well, if they can do that, then how on earth is it a race? There's a mosquito buzzing around this camera, folks. How is it a race of people when they can just suddenly turn someone into a Jew? Even when you go back and look at the history of it, it was when Jacob became Israel because he changed his personality, and the angel bestowed a new name on him and called him Israel because he was now worshipping the one true God. She didn't change his DNA. He didn't become a race all of a sudden. And people who thought like Jacob, the Israelites, were people who worshipped the one true God. And even if you look in the Bible, these were a motley crew of people. If you look at the Exodus and all the stuff that's supposed to have happened, they're described as being Turks and Mongols and all sorts of people. They weren't a race. They weren't a race of Jews. There is no race of Jews. Jewishness, Judaism, is a faith. It's not a race. It's not a race of people. So yeah, I mean, everything they tell you is a lie, but it's all very transparent when you start looking at it through the right sort of eyes, folks. You really start looking at how they say things and what they're talking about, and look at the history of what they're talking about. Of course, they've rewritten so much of their history. That's why it's so difficult to have this sort of a conversation with a young Jew, anyone under like 70 years old, because they've all been fed a false history. I mean, they've got books that look very official that they teach people in schools, and they teach them a completely ridiculous and fabricated version of history. But if you try to argue with a Jew about any of this sort of stuff, they'll tie you up in rhetoric, they'll tie you up in all sorts of ways of doing it. They've got Hasbro sites that you can go to, and you can look at lists of how to respond to certain questions. They've got this whole mechanism in place to project this Jewish identity they want to project, and to protect it in ways that they want to protect it. So you've really got to look at how they do it. That's why you can't have these conversations with a Jew, because they're all programmed. It's the most programmed race on earth, which again, I mean, even though they have clearly genocidal tendencies and absolute abhorrent hate for Palestinians and for Arabs in general, it's very difficult to hate them because they are programmed into this. And I guarantee you, if you grew up in Israel and grew up with that education and grew up with that mindset, you'd probably think the same things because of the level of programming. Again, watch that film Defamation, which shows you the sort of stuff that they put these children through. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, like I said, there's all these false history books and all sorts of crap they teach these kids, and they firmly believe it. So, you know, and they believe they're down-pressed and downtrodden and all sorts of rubbish, you know. So, you know, it's very difficult to hate them. But again, it's very difficult to go along with anything they do as well. I mean, this genocide of Gaza has really shown them in their true light and what they're capable of and what they're willing to do, not just to Palestinians, but to non-Jews. That's a pretty freaky thought, folks. That's a pretty freaky thought, but that's what these people are doing, and that's the mentality that they have. So yeah, crazy, crazy stuff, folks. But the world is waking up to it. I don't think they're going to get away with what they're doing, and it's important to keep focus on it because they do control so much of the narrative. I mean, they control the money system, which is why the politicians do all the stuff they do. I mean, when you look at the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, who controls that? Well, of course, it's controlled heavily by Jewish interests. And the Bank of International Settlements is the bank that controls all central banks all around the world. So if you want to have an economy, you better do what the Bank of International Settlements tells you to do, which is basically follow the Jewish agenda. So, it's such a scam, folks. But there is this huge awakening anyway, even with Gen Z and thinking that climate change is real and all this sort of stuff. At least they're waking up to the lies. Eventually they're going to wake up to the fact that that's a lie as well. It's just that the weather is so heavily manipulated that they don't really see through it at the moment. They don't believe that weather control is possible when it is. They've been controlling the weather for at least 100 years, if not more. And they're very open about it. They're very open about it when they want to be. But there is this huge awakening. I mean, a lot of people are waking up to the fact that the vax has killed a lot of people. Millions have died from the vax, folks. Some of the figures that are coming through, there was a new report that came out in the UK which basically showed you that those people who are jabbed have a higher death rate than those who were not jabbed. Those who received 3 or 4 jabs have the highest death rate of all. And there's no denying this. I mean, it's right there on the graph. It shows you what this jab has done to people. So there's no denying it. All this sort of information is coming out. There's a lot of people speaking out against it now. And there's still people dying all over the place. People who were jabbed and people who actually believed the bottom line have actually had family members die and all sorts of bad stuff going on, and cancers and all sorts of weird shit that they didn't have before, like turbo cancer, of course, which we'd never heard of before the jab. Funny how that works, isn't it? It's like, what was the one they had in Australia? The cough. It was ridiculous. It was some ridiculous hurricane asthma or something like that, or tornado asthma or something like ridiculous. They said in Australia people were getting asthma from some normal everyday event, which of course they weren't. But a lot of people are seeing it. I mean, with the fires in Maui, the moving the world into this whole smart environment, the genocide of Gaza, the people dying from the jab, people seeing how contrived all these wars and all this bullshit is, the stuff they're doing in Ukraine. A lot of people are waking up, folks. They've really played their hand too much, but they're really blatant about it now as well. It's like they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit if you see it. They're just going to do it anyway because nobody's pushing back in the right way. Everyone's protesting in the streets and blocking off things and doing all the stuff like the farmers are doing, which is, just playing into their hands. People are claiming Gaza's fake. I mean, I tell you, folks, anybody who's claiming Gaza is fake, what's going on in Gaza is a sideshow with actors and rubber babies. These people work for Israel, or they work for Israel and they don't know it, because nothing that's going on in Gaza is fake, folks. These people are being genocided live on TV, and people are calling it fake and making up conspiracy theories about it and all sorts of crap. It's unbelievable, folks, that they're doing it. Look at the garden from this angle. There's still quite a bit of damage, bent trees and roofs down and fallen stuff, and some of the buildings are looking a little worse for wear. But it's definitely coming along, folks. It was such a good event this year. Acapulco was such a good event, folks. And again, if you want to get the replay, I'll put a link below. You can go and get the replay. It's really worth watching. There was a lot of good speakers. I had a really, really good time this year. And hopefully it'll happen next year. A lot of forces out to sort of stop what's going on, stop Jeff and stop myself. And, like I said, with hurricanes and fires and earthquakes and just the crap they're throwing at us, it's unbelievable. Financial stuff as well. I'm having trouble with my card working sometimes, and just all sorts of weird stuff going on. The Croatia tour is definitely coming up as well, folks, which will begin in April and will go through probably till the end of May. And I'll put it up on the screen. There's quite a number of places I'm doing. These are going to be small events. It's kind of more of an underground thing, but if you live in one of these towns, just start talking to your local people who are in the know, and they'll be able to let you know when and where the event's going to happen. I don't know the names of the venues yet. When I get the names of the venues, I will post them on the website. Can't post them in the forums because the forums are still down. We still have not heard from Adam, and his emails are still bouncing back. Adam, we're really concerned about you, brother. If you could please contact me, just send me just an email and say, hi, I don't want to do the forums anymore, or whatever. Just let us know that you're okay, mate. It would be really, really good. We'd really appreciate it. There's a lot of people who are quite concerned about you. There's been people being blocked on my Telegram channel as well, so I post on my BitChute today saying Max has blocked me from his Telegram channel. I haven't blocked anyone from my Telegram channel, folks. I'm not on there very much. I go there occasionally, maybe once or twice a week I'll go and post a comment or two. But I haven't blocked anyone. So perhaps you pissed the admins off or something, I don't know. But email me at thecrowhouse@proton.me and give me your username on Telegram and I'll get you unblocked again. And for my Telegram admins, please don't block people simply because you disagree with their opinion or you disagree with what they're posting. I mean, some people might post a lot of URLs and a lot of links to other sites, and in that case they're very likely blocked by the bot. We've got a bot there called Rose who blocks spammers, because you get a lot of bots on the site. It's just basically a bot that looks out for other bots and blocks them. And most bots will spam URLs. They'll spam 4 or 5 posts of URLs straight after each other. And as soon as you post like 4 posts of URLs straight after each other, Rose thinks you're a bot and she bans you and deletes your posts very often as well. So you've really got to look at what you're posting, folks, and just be aware of that sort of stuff. And we get so many bots attack the channel, so many bots attack the forums. I mean, we had Russian porn bots attacking the forums for weeks on end. I had to literally go and disable registration. And 3 days after I did that, the forums got hacked and went down, and Adam went missing. So very strange stuff, folks. I mean, they're really coming at us in so many ways. I mean, I've been banned on so many places, folks. Like I've mentioned before, I'm banned on YouTube, banned on Facebook, banned on iTunes, iHeart, SoundCloud, LinkedIn. I was recently banned on MeWe. I was banned on Getter. Just last week, Odyssey blacklisted 5 of my videos. These are not viewable anymore. 4 of them were about the situation in Gaza. 1 of them was an old video from 2001 or 2020 or 2021, which was about Dan Andrews. They blocked that as well. So this video that I'm uploading today may be the last video I bother uploading to Odyssey. I don't know whether I will use that platform anymore after this video. If they're going to ban my stuff, what's the point? Probably got a bit of wind noise here, folks. Sorry about that. I'm just walking through a section of wind that wasn't there before. Yes, I don't know how long I'll continue using Odyssey, folks. I can't see the point if they're going to blacklist my videos because they don't like what I say. It's like Rumble. I mean, Rumble is very compromised. Rumble's shadow banned a number of my videos already, deleted a couple and shadow banned a couple more. I mean, Rumble's one of the main shareholders is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, of course, is who created the Palantir software, which Coles Supermarket is now using in Australia to protect you, of course. The most sophisticated data tracking biometric software on earth, Palantir, which morphed from the Promise software, which was used on 9/11, which was the backdoor into so many computers, Israeli software, of course. And that's kind of morphed into Palantir, which took over. And that's run by Peter Thiel, and that is who has also become a major shareholder in Rumble. So this is why you're seeing censorship on Rumble. And of course, Peter Thiel, trying to pretend that he's an anti-globalist, when in fact he's part of the Bilderberg Group. He's on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group, so, and he runs Palantir. So they're all infiltrating, folks. The alternate media has been infiltrated by so many people who aren't bringing you the truth at all. They're just steering the agenda where they want it to go and saying things you want to hear from them so that you'll believe that they're the good guys. Like Tucker Carlson has got a major following, folks. But yeah, 5 videos banned on Odyssey, which is a bit of a shock, I must admit. I mean, I thought it was a free speech platform. You could say anything you want. Perhaps I'm a little bit too direct in some of the things I say. I admit that. I mean, sometimes I've said that I'd like to see Dan Andrews dragged out on the street and hung, simply because that's what we would have done in the old days. And you think about it, he's murdered so many people by proxy through what he did with the jab in Melbourne. So many of these world leaders have murdered so many millions of people by proxy through this jab, through the wars, through everything that they do. Now they want to draft people, send them off to die in Ukraine fighting the terrible Russian menace, which doesn't exist. It gets to a point where, what are you going to do? You're going to protest these people? You're going to vote them in and vote them out? You're voting for 2 sides of the same coin. It doesn't matter who you vote for, folks. What you've got to do is stop complying with your own slavery. step back into common law if that's what it takes. I mean, just be a person of integrity and realise that there is only one law, which is God's law, which is do no harm. And anything that causes you to step outside that law or step outside your moral compass is not a law. It's just legislation that is the colour of law and is attempting to supplant law and replace it with the will of politicians. That's really what's going on, folks. And that's what's going on in Israel and Gaza. It's complete deception. There's just so much propaganda. But you notice that as well, the propaganda on Twitter. The level of propaganda they've got to go to. Like, some of it is comical. It's almost like a cartoon show. It really is. It's cartoonish, some of the stuff they say. There's one video I saw the other day where they had a bombed out house, completely destroyed, Palestinian house, and they went up to a bookshelf and they said, look, here's a copy of Mein Kampf on the bookshelf. Shows that they all support Hitler. This is a perfectly pristine copy of Mein Kampf on a bookshelf in this bombed out, blown up house where everything's destroyed. There's this completely perfect copy of Mein Kampf just sitting there on the shelf. Yeah, because it wasn't put there by the Israelis, of course. No. It wasn't put there for a photo op to convince you that the Palestinians all support Hitler. It was ridiculous. Remember, like a couple of years ago, or even maybe at the start of the war, no, it wasn't that long ago, Benjamin Netanyahu actually said Hitler didn't really want to exterminate the Jews in World War II, but a Muslim cleric came and told him that that's what he had to do. And so it was really a Palestinian that caused the Holocaust. It's just a joke, folks. And I'll argue anybody about the Holocaust, folks. There was no Holocaust. There is no evidence to support it. The official narrative is, in fact, scientifically, biologically impossible to have been carried out the way they say. It's not possible for that many people who have died that quickly in the manner that they say, and it would be a completely impractical way to do it anyway, and it's not what the Germans would do, I would suggest. They would do something like what Eisenhower did, simply put everybody in a camp and allow them to die. Oh, no, they built all these work camps and they did all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. They didn't do any of that stuff, folks. But anyway, and you notice with what's going on in Gaza as well, they're calling it a war, and it's not a war. It's a genocide. It's a slaughter against unarmed civilians. You notice there's been no battle footage of Israelis. It's supposed to be a war, isn't it? Wouldn't you have battle footage? I mean, we see battle footage from other wars. We see people running across the front line and doing all these sorts of things. All we've seen from the Israeli side is people in military uniform walking through empty, blown-up streets, shooting into empty buildings, shooting up school desks, shooting up the most ridiculous stuff that doesn't even require shooting up. We've never seen them actually shooting people. We've never seen anybody shooting back at them.
Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Hamas can control the information.
You asked me a question and you said
Gaza.
you would be brief. I haven't, you're right. But I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly
and also
my point.
because they're dead.
They're the pictures Hamas wants.
But there are also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died. Those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Okay, here's my
don't want to see
question
a
for you,
single
Mark.
child
You say,
killed.
I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe
Correct.
what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
There's been a few Palestinian videos that have come out that have shown Palestinians shooting tanks with RPGs and things. Whether these are real or not is another question. But we've seen no footage from the Israeli side of actual battle. It's just been Israelis running through empty streets, shooting into empty buildings, blowing up empty buildings, setting explosive charges, demolishing empty buildings, dancing, having food parties, mocking Palestinians, lying in their beds, all sorts of stuff like that. You know, from the Palestinian side, we see children scavenging in garbage, and we see Israeli snipers shooting at them while they're scavenging. It's crazy, folks. You're not seeing any battle footage from the Israeli side. Think about that. Why do you think that is? Because it isn't a war. There are, the whole concept that it's a war against two countries, it's not. Gaza is virtually a suburb. You know, it's 25 miles long and 4.5 miles wide. 2.3 million people packed in there with a huge, gigantic wall around them, caged in there so they can't escape. They've got no weapons. They've got none of the stuff that they're saying they've got. All the weapons that you see being placed in buildings by Israelis and claiming they're Hamas, it's not true, folks. These are not Hamas weapons. These are just stuff that the Israelis are bringing in and putting in there for a photo op. Like I said, half the time, even when they feed Palestinians, they shoot them after the photo op, throw them into a pit and just move on and do it to the next crowd. You know, it's really, really a deceptive place, folks. But think about that. There's no battle footage coming from Palestine. If this was actually a war between two countries, you'd see battle footage. But you're not. But the anger is rising, folks. The anger is really, really rising. And people are beginning to push back in all sorts of ways. I mean, even with what they're doing with the whole gay agenda, they're really pushing the gay agenda. Some people are outraged by what they're teaching kids in schools. Hey, look at this shit.
Oh look, another obscene pornographic book being distributed to children. Up your bum, you have a prostate gland, which feels nice when massaged. The anus is also sensitive and responds to being played with. So after she's giving a tutorial on sexual pleasure, she also instructs kids to be creative when they explore. Now the author is encouraging kids to get online, where they're at most risk for sexual exploitation. Intentionally using these quotes is to encourage kids to go online and meet other adults for sex. I've used Grindr. The advantages are that you can get what you want quickly. The downside is that it's the same people repeatedly, so it can get boring very quickly. The benefits are obvious: quick, easy, and uncomplicated sex. It goes on to say, I've met a lot of interesting people through sex apps, encouraging kids to have transactional, high-risk sexual behavior with adults on an adult website. This isn't just grooming anymore. This is encouraging kids to become sexually active with adults. This is sexual enticement of minors. This is promoting pedophilia. Now the author is giving a blowjob tutorial to the younger audience this book was intended for, saying that it's more about sliding your mouth up and down the shaft of his cock. Want to know a secret? Straight people have anal sex all the time too. Straight men like stuff up their bums just as much as gay ones. Anal sex isn't a gay thing. Women can pleasure each other in a variety of fun ways. The clitoris really does like being licked and kissed. Let's end this with toys and strap-ons. These people are a danger to children.
Yeah, that's just really what you want your kids to be learning about, isn't it? Yeah, anal sex, gay people having anal sex. Oh, we've got to have all sorts of sex. Well, a bit of a point here. I mean, your anus isn't actually a sexual organ. So it's not really sex that you're having, is it? Perhaps it is for the guy who's doing it, but for the guy who's receiving it, that's not sex. It's not a sexual organ. It's just the sickest culture, folks. It really is. I don't think half the gay people on earth aren't even really gay. They're just men who are obsessed with their own buttholes for some reason. Strange, strange people, folks. But anyway, I think that's about all I want to say, folks. Like I said, this Croatian tour is coming up. I'll keep you posted on that when I know a little bit more about it. It's pretty underground, like I said. I mean, the people that are organising it basically want me to just travel around Croatia and see a lot of Croatia and meet the people. There's a lot of sort of big underground truth movement in Croatia. I actually had quite a bit of support when I was there last time. I was surprised at how many people knew my work in Croatia. When I used to do my old radio shows that were just me talking, and I used to start off with an opening quote and all that sort of stuff, they actually used to translate those shows and play them in Croatia. There was a radio station who used to translate all my weekly shows and play them in Croatia with the Croatian voice overdubbed over the top of it, which was quite interesting. I mean, I found that quite amazing they would do that. I've actually been thinking of returning to that format for a little while, actually, folks. Start off with an opening quote and just doing my shows from home and forgetting the walk and talks for a little while. I don't know what you'd think about that, but just going back to the old format for a while. Of course, it's coming on to summer here in Acapulco as well, and it's not so bad today, but in another month or two it's going to be getting really, really hot again, and probably in a couple of weeks it's going to be getting really hot again. It's always hot in Acapulco. There's only 3 temperatures here: hot, really hot, or less hot. That's basically what you get in Acapulco, but whatever it is, it's always hot. There's a rainy season, but even in a wet season it doesn't really get so cold. I've never had to use a blanket put it that way, since I've been here, like in 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years, I've never actually had to put a blanket on my bed. I just sleep with a sheet, sometimes not even with a sheet. So that's how hot it gets here in Acapulco. But yeah, I'm thinking about going back to the old format for a little while. So I don't know how you'd think about that, but it might be fun. I mean, the Secret Garden's great. I do love coming here and doing my walking tours. Perhaps I'll do them occasionally, but I might just go back to sitting in my room in the cool and go back to the old format for a little while. If I do that, I might even start sending some audio clips to the American Voice Radio, because that's actually where I started, was American Voice Radio. I did American Voice Radio for something like 12 years or something like that, 10 years or 12 years. And then one day I just thought, look, I'm tiring of doing these weekly shows. It's a lot of work to gather all this information, to put all this stuff together every week. I used to do pretty comprehensive, informative shows because they were once a week. And I'd be gathering information from the whole week and just kind of talking on that, and not even really putting my face on there. I don't think I ever put my face on those radio shows because it's a radio show. But I used to make a YouTube slideshow to go with it and post that as well. And then I stopped doing it because I was just really tired of working so hard to do these shows and get them out every week, and said I needed a break. I contacted the owner of the station and said, look, I need a break. And stopped doing them in 2018, or the end of 2018, in about November or something. And then the Australian fires happened, and then Christchurch shooting happened, and then COVID happened, and all sorts of stuff happened. And I ended up doing videos like 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, and doing 3 or 4 times as many videos as what I was doing on the weekly shows. And it's like I stopped doing them because I wanted to have a break. Never did get that break. Haven't really had a break, folks. I mean, occasionally I'll go away for a weekend, or I'll do something. But even when I do, it's not a break. It's crazy. I mean, I had a break during an Acapulco, but that wasn't a break. I was here speaking, and I was socialising, and doing all the stuff that goes with the conference. So I still haven't had that break that I wanted in 2018. Funny how that works. So maybe I'll go back to doing that other format for a little while anyway. But you can leave your comments below, see what you think about that. But yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say, folks. There is a huge awakening. Be aware of that. There's a huge amount of awareness growing anyway. I don't know whether I'd call it an awakening, but there's a huge amount of awareness growing. People are realising they're living in a corrupt slavery system. And as I've said, one of the keys to freeing ourselves from that system is to remember who and what you are, and to put Palestine in the place where it needs to be, because the fact that all your governments are supporting this shows that all your governments have invalidated themselves. I mean, if COVID wasn't enough, now they're openly supporting a genocide. They can call it whatever they want. We all know that it's a genocide. Just the fact that Israel has got to put so much effort into propagandizing Twitter and social media, and the people that post these posts that are blatant propaganda, and you read the comments, and every single comment is hacking them down and knows exactly how much they're scamming the world. So everything's becoming clear, everything's becoming transparent. But in the background, you've got this whole AI grid coming in place as well, and that's the key. That's how they're really going to get people. And the looming World War III they're trying to push, and the crash of the financial system. I mean, there's so much stuff that we've got on the horizon, folks. I think it's going to be a very interesting year. But through it all, there is a huge wave of awareness growing. As I've said before, one of the most important things you can do at this time is to connect with people, find your tribe, get in touch with yourself, get in touch with your life skills, because you're going to need them to get through what's coming. But anyway, folks, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for joining me on this report. It's always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you to anybody who's ever sent me any support or any kind words, any kind emails, the usual thank yous I give you. Again, thank you to all the people out there on the front line speaking out. It's now more important than ever that people do, and that you influence people in your local community. Don't just speak out online. And being online, I mean, so many people being online all the time. There is a real world out there, folks. And the danger this is doing to the kids as well. There's actually talk now that kids are suffering blindness. Gen Z is in risk of becoming a blind generation, and their excuse is that these kids spend too much time online, they don't go outside, and that's why they're developing blindness. The reason they're developing blindness, folks, is LED lighting. LED lighting is very, very bad for you. As I said before, if you don't use certain muscles, they get atrophied. You don't use your legs, it becomes hard to walk. You don't use your muscles, they become atrophied and don't work anymore. It's the same with your brain. It's the same, which is why personal assistants are so bad, because people aren't thinking anymore, not learning how to do anything, because AI is doing it all for them. And if you don't use your ears and you don't use your eyes, then this can also have adverse effects. LED lighting is a really bland white light. You don't get all of the light spectrum. When you're looking at a room which is lit with LED lights, car headlights, street lights, all this sort of stuff, the colours, a lot of the blending between colours is removed. So after a while of looking at these things, your eyes can't see those frequencies anymore. It's the same with MP3s. If you listen to an MP3 file compared to an old vinyl record, well, you're missing out on half the frequencies. They drop half the frequencies out, they figure you don't really need them, makes the file smaller. That's their excuse. We want smaller files for quicker downloads. But you miss out on half of the audio spectrum, and so your ears stop hearing those parts of the audio spectrum. Same with LED lighting. You're missing out on half of the light spectrum, and so your eyes become atrophied and they no longer see those parts of the light spectrum, and eventually you become blind. Which is why, of course, they're putting the LED lighting in place. LED lighting, MP3 sound, all of these things are designed to impair your bodily functions, your normal bodily functions, your audio functions, to impede the senses, folks. This is a sense-based reality. It's all to do with the five senses, and they're attacking us on every single level, even on the level of the five senses. So be very careful of LED lighting, folks. Get incandescent lights in your home, or just firelight or whatever. And go outside, get off the internet for a little bit. It's good for you. That's why I come and do these walks in the secret garden. That's why I don't take a cell phone with me anywhere I go. Just get away from this stuff, folks, when you can. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now, folks. Again, the same thanks that I always give to people. Thank you to anybody who's ever made a contribution to the website. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you to anybody who's ever sent me a kind email, and thank you to all those people speaking out. I'm going to leave you now with a report by, what's his first name? I can't remember. Montaz is his last name. He is a photojournalist from Gaza, and he gives us his little spiel of what he's doing, why he did it, and he's actually left now. He evacuated himself from Gaza because he had the funds to do it. Again, I've got Nadal's fundraiser as well below. If you could send any contribution to Nadal, it would be awesome, folks. He would love to get out of Gaza and get away and find some safety for himself and his 2-year-old child. He's in Rafah. Israel is attacking Rafah at the moment, claiming that there's Hamas militants there, when of course there aren't. It's just a civilian refugee population. And that's where he is, and he's living in a tent now. I mean, the fundraiser says he's living in a shed or a shack. He's not. Now he's living in a tent with his little girl. He would love to get out. But as I said, it's quite expensive to get out. Doesn't matter if you've got a border pass, the Egyptian guards will still charge you thousands of dollars just to cross the border simply because you're a Palestinian. So he would love to get out, and if you can put in a contribution to his fundraiser, it would be greatly appreciated. I'll put in what I can, but I just don't have a lot of money, folks, so it's difficult for me to do that sort of stuff. But anyway, I'll leave it there for now, and I'll leave you with this talk by Mr. Montaz, who is a Palestinian. It's very poignant and very factual, and really worth listening to what this guy's saying, folks, because the Palestinians are a forgotten people, and we have to deal with this situation. And by dealing with it, we can also deal with our own governments, because that's the only way to deal with the situation in Palestine. Is not to protest what Israel's doing, to protest your government's support of it, and to see they have actually invalidated themselves with this action. That's how to get through it. But anyway, folks, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for joining me on this report. Please take very good care until we speak next. In Lakesh.
You ask us to show the reality. We showed you the reality. With my phone, I can show you everything. This is my country. I'm doing this for my family. I did this for Gaza to show the world without any filters, without any lies. But it's all worthless, all useless. Nothing changed.
I literally was going to die today.
My life in Gaza before the war was full of limitations and full of depression. I didn't have a plan maybe for my life, but I kept dreaming about things that I want to have, I want to get, I want to reach. I found my passion when I was like 16 years old. I was creating my freedom with my hands in photography. I feel like I'm doing something that healed me from inside. I always dreamed to be a traveler photographer. I wish I reached people with my beautiful pictures of Gaza, not with our suffering. I didn't want to be a war photojournalist, but you don't have the option, you don't have the freedom to choose. I'm a Palestinian living in Gaza Strip, so I can't ignore or turn my back. At the beginning of the war, I started to film and run in the streets. I was using my basic language, my basic English, my damaged camera body, my lens. The challenges of covering the war, for me, I'm from there, so it's different. It's like a double pressure on me. It's happening to my people, to my friends, to my family.
والشهيد حبيب الله لا إله إلا الله والشهيد حبيب الله والشهيد حبيب الله لا
Tourists were like the most targeted people. Trying to cover and at the same time trying to survive. I saw it. I was gonna die because they opened fire on me. I got some threats. Who are you?
I'm nobody.
For Gazan, it's known that no caller ID. It's the IDF.
Can you post a story maybe condemning Hamas so this can all end?
I reached millions of people in a few days in the war. And I think maybe this protected me. Many journalists lost their lives. I lost 18 family members. I lost more than 12 close friends. Hatem is a paramedic. I lost Salah and Khalid. They are twins. I lost Mahmoud. I lost Ali. I lost my neighbors also. I lost Muhammad, my neighbor, and he was a young guy, full of passion, and they struck his house full of immigrants, people who came from Gaza. Sorry for people who evacuated Gaza. Don't forget also about the journalists I lost, the friends. So, yeah, we lost a lot. So I was filming this and showing the world and no one stopped it. So, why should I keep filming? For whom?
So, this is the last time you will see me with this heavy, stinky vest. I decided to evacuate today.
I didn't decide to leave till the moment I saw the Israeli tanks that reached the end of my street. I live in a hotel room now. Well, it's weird. I can't enjoy anything. I can't feel happy about anything. Maybe I'll be useful from outside. to make some noise, more noise. I didn't expect to be famous by the war, but in the end, it happened. I don't like it, to be honest. Just like bring me back the people I lost, and bring me back Gaza.